we'd just finished rehearsing for that day at 3 Mill Studios, and it's me and Derren in the back of the Uber on the way to this thing, and I was like, I feel like a rock star, right? I just this is what the hell has happened to my life? I just couldn't believe it. You know, when you're sat in the back of a car with Derren Brown, what do you chat about? Stupidly, I couldn't think of anything to say, so I just said, "Oh, Derren, did you know that where we've been rehearsing 3 Mill Studios, I've actually been there before?" And he went, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah, my mum told me yesterday that when I was a baby, I was a baby model for Pampers, and we did it at 3 Mill Studios." And he thought this was hilarious. I thought, great, Derren found this funny, excellent. And he kept on going on about it, you know, Pampers, little Pampers boy, right? He just thought it was so funny. So then when I got my book, I was so excited to get it, especially the deluxe copy, which was very expensive. This was like 250 quid, signed by Derren Brown to Little Boy Pampers.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Desert Island Tricks. Another guest joins me today. It's going to be another really interesting list, I should think. But before we get into today's guest, let's tell you about the concept. The idea is that our guests are going to be marooned on an island. I just realised I say this every podcast, so I apologise. But just to let you know, we're going to maroon our guests onto a desert island. We're not really going to chuck them on an island. We're going to leave them wherever they are. And when they're on the island, they're allowed to take with them 8 tricks, 1 book, and 1 non-magic item that they use for magic that they could not live without. Particulars, things like what audience is there, if there are animals there, the square footage, is there a hut, whatever, that's fine. Their island is their own island. We don't mind about that. It's basically just the things that they could not live without. That's all we care about. So let's get on to today's guest. Today's guest is another person that I'm not too well versed on, which makes it extra exciting for me. He's just come out of the West End working alongside a really talented cast in a show that I saw 3 times, and it was superb every time, called Unbelievable. He also has a couple of really cool releases to the magic community, and I'm sure we're going to see more in the future, especially a Hard Stretch. If you haven't seen it, it's so good. So do go check it out. Today's guest is Mr. Roman Armstrong. Hello, Roman. How are you?
Hiya, Jamie. You clearly came to see Unbelievable on the 3 good nights, which is really, well done. But well done, I have to say.
It was the organisation on your part, seeing you going around and just being here, there and everywhere. It was, yeah, it must have been so full on when you first started doing it.
I definitely lost some weight doing that. I didn't have to do any exercise, didn't have to go to the gym, just had to do Unbelievable. So now the show's closed, I can feel it, you know, piling up already. So, yeah, going to have to sort that out. But yeah, I'm so excited. I mean, just before we started recording, Jamie was like, do not take the island thing seriously. And I've started to now really question everything that I've chosen. But partly because I was sort of thinking, well, is this a gig that I've been booked on an island? Are all my audience just people with coconuts for heads that I've created with bamboo arms and they're not actually real people? I don't know. We'll find out. But I think there's a balance here of things that I do like, I do perform / things that just mean something to me and things that I kind of enjoy practicing as well. Because I think if I'm going to be on an island, I'm going to have a lot of time on my hands. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I think I'm feeling pretty good about this list. So I'm excited.
That's part of the interesting nature of this podcast is you're not sure where people's minds are going to go when they hear the desert island part of it. So it's been kind of interesting to hear, you know, what the island looks like to them. I'm guessing that even listeners, hopefully listeners are playing along and they're making their own lists, which would be great. But it's interesting to think about what your island looks to you, what the technicalities of it, how big is it, what's there. Not like each of us have a different concept of what that island is. So I think it's just as interesting. Like no one so far has said, people with coconuts for heads that they've made up. So that just gives us an interesting insight into what your island looks like.
Yeah, well, I remember when we did Unbelievable, in the second day of rehearsals, we had this mental health talk, basically just sort of, making everyone aware that it's all okay. It's quite a big project that we're going to work on. It can get quite heavy. And I remember by the end of it, I'd asked quite a few questions, and the woman who ran it was like this mental health expert. And she said, "You think differently." And that has stuck with me ever since. Like having a professional say to me, "You think differently," really made me question my brain somewhat. So I don't know. I think this is fairly normal. So I think let's yeah. What happens? I haven't listened to any of these because let's just
they're not at the point of recording. They're not live, so
oh, thank God for that. I was so worried.
Hopefully, by the time this goes out, listeners will have heard a good couple of months. So we're basically recording these, listeners at home, quite far in the future. So the podcast hasn't even started. And we've already got 3 to 4 months recorded, ready to go into the system, just to make sure that we're ahead of the game, to make sure that these are consistent, because we really want these to be something that people enjoy listening to. It's reliable. It's there for them every single week. It's, something to escape to. It's something that we're going to try and keep consistent as much as we can.
Also means that I can't copy anyone else.
No, absolutely. And we've been quite good with that. We've asked people not to talk to each other and stuff like that. Especially, we've got a couple of father-son groups on. So obviously we had Preston Nyman and Andy Nyman, which are 2 guests. Spoiler alert if they've not been on yet. And Harry Nardi, Peter Nardi. So we've asked them not to tell each other's lists, even Harry and Peter, even though they work in the same place, and we made sure that they didn't talk to each other, so that it was a truly surprising list for each person. So yeah, it should be interesting.
Cool, excellent.
So let's go to your desert island, Roman. Let's take you there now. What is the first item that you would take with you?
Okay, this is the only item that I think that you're going to have got correctly. So if you're playing Desert Island Tricks Bingo, you can tick this one off. It is hard stretch. Absolutely, I'm taking hard stretch with me. I mean, if you don't know it, it's my only release to date, but therefore it's also my first release. So it will always mean a lot to me, just as a product in and of itself. But also, I just think it's really fun to do. And I think one of the things, as I said, it's important for me if I'm on this island is what will I enjoy practicing, because I'm going to have a lot of time doing that. And there's a couple of moves in there that are a bit knacky, but it's that's why it's good fun, I think. And also I think that you can quite easily do Crazy Man's handcuffs with a coconut person. Just get twigs for hands, hold the rubber band in place, and you can do Crazy Man's handcuffs with them. So I think for that reason, it ticks all the desert island boxes for me. Yeah, I'm absolutely taking hard stretch.
And so if people haven't seen hard stretch, do you want to synopsize what the trick is?
Yeah, so essentially it's the finale for a rubber band routine. And you can do, because of that, you can do any rubber band routine that you already do. All right. But the ending is you have a ring and a rubber band, and you say that they're going to change places. So you get the spectator to hold onto the ring. And as you stretch out the rubber band, the moment that they're about to change places, something kind of weird happens. You let go of the rubber band and it remains in this kind of suspended sort of position because it's lost its stretch, right? And what you've actually done, rather than making the 2 items properly change places, you've made the essence of the rubberiness swap with the ring. So now the rubber band is now metallic and it's gone hard, and the ring is now rubbery, which is the one that they're holding onto in their hands. And I don't remember who said it, but obviously, a good trick is a trick that you can summarize very succinctly in 1 sentence. But I think hard stretch is the anomaly, I think, because that moment where you let go of the rubber band, a lot happens in their head. because that makes no sense. And I think it's really good. And I think, yeah, it's also it's the first trick that I've put out, but it's also the first one that I created, right? And had the balls to actually try out at a gig, because I'd never done that. I'd always just done stuff that I'd bought, or or like my take on other routines. Never something that was like new. Do you know what I mean? And I remember doing it for the first time, and it got the strongest reaction to anything I've ever done. And I think it's because the trick was good. The trick's great, but I think it's because I was just so excited about it. I realized actually it's how much I can apply that to other tricks as well. You have to care so much about it, as though it's new, and then people will love it. And I actually remember before I sent it off to Peter to consider buying it, I did it at a wedding, and this guy was like, "Oh my God, that's amazing! Do it to her. That's amazing. Do it to him." And you shouldn't ever repeat a trick, right? He saw this trick about 15 times because he kept on dragging me around to everyone. And eventually he was like, right, I think I know how it's done now. But do it again. Do it to her over there. Do it to him. Do it to that group there. Like literally he was like my marketing guy. So I was like, okay, I'm on to a winner here. So hard stretch. That's the effect. And I've spoken to a couple of people as well that have already bought it and never done it, and then just one day thought, right, I'm going to do it now, and then they realized how good it is. I think that some people are a little bit scared because there's one move, but the routining means that no one will ever see that move. No one will ever see it. I've done that move so clunkily and gotten away with it. So because it happens at the moment where no one is looking at you. So I think it's I love it. I absolutely love it. Even if I hadn't created it, it would still be on my list.
Yeah, it's a superb trick, and it's such an off-the-wall concept. We've had a few people in previous episodes talk about using an everyday item, but not using it for its intended use, and that's exactly what happens here. It's the property of the item that you're using it for, not its use. So, for example, I didn't really explain that very well, but some people talk about like a deck of cards. You can use it as a deck of cards in a card trick, or you can use it for something like Little Door by Roddy McGee, where you're changing the properties of that item so it's not behaving the way that it's expected to. And that's exactly what hard stretch does. You're taking the property of something that we all know, we're all really familiar with, we know intuitively how that works, and you're going, nope, I'm going to take all of that away from your brain and mess with it. And that's why I love it. It's great. And that leads us on to your second item. So what would you take in your second position?
Okay, so number 2 is Coin Vexed by Mr. David Penn. And I don't actually really do this trick that much anymore. However, it just means a lot to me, this routine, because I actually won it as a prize when I started getting into magic. And what happened was I was a big fan of the Wizard Project Review back in 2010. I watched it religiously. It was my favorite thing. I remember actually being on scout camps, and at Wednesday at 12 o'clock, I'd run out into the wood, get my phone, log it into the Wi-Fi, and my crappy little iPhone 3, and just watch the Wizard Product Review. Any time that I could watch it, I would. I'd make sure that I didn't miss it. And anyway, I don't know if you remember. No one will, because this was 14 years ago. But they had a competition one week, which was to send in a photo of you watching the show in an interesting location. Do you remember that? So the prize was Coin Vexed. Spoiler alert, I won, okay? But forget that for a moment. So that week, when they announced that competition, I went on a little getaway with one of my friends and his family to Alton Towers, which is, again, if you don't know me, Roman Armstrong Law, one of my favourite places in the world, okay? Now, there, I had a really terrible time. I don't mind saying this now because like 15 years have passed. But him and his family did not want to go into the theme park. They just wanted to go into the water park. And I was fuming about this. Is a complete sidetrack now. But I was like, why have you come all this way and you're not going to go to the theme park? Anyway, I'm deviating. But in the water park, there was a ride called the Master Blaster, which is a rubber dinghy thing. You go all the way around the water park. And at the end, you get a photo. So little chubby Roman, 12 years old, bought the picture of him going down the slide, and I put my hands out in kind of like a sort of like a dinosaur sort of position. When I bought the picture, I superimposed a laptop onto it. Okay, so then I sent that in. So I said, "This is me watching the Wizard product review on the water slide at Alton Towers," and then I remember my parents were on their way to a gig, and I was in the back of the car, and I was watching the Wizard product review. It was a Wednesday, of course. And they announced the winner was me, and I burst into tears. It was like the best moment of my life. My whole family, we still talk about it. It was like just a great moment. So anyway, so I won CoinVex, and I then went to World Magic Shop to collect it. I went to the lads convention, met Craig Petty for the first time. Because I'd sort of built that connection, Craig then did my birthday parties. Years later, I then started working for Craig, and then obviously then released Hard Stretch, but that wouldn't have happened if Craig hadn't introduced me to Peter. So all of this thing that's happened now, I even believe me working, for Unbelievable and all of these things, getting this confidence in magic, all comes back to that moment when I kind of stepped my foot into the door and entered that competition and won that prize. So CoinVex to me is like the pinnacle. It's not just a trick. It's like that's like a moment in my life that changed it. Do you know what I mean? So that for that reason, I'd have to take CoinVex. Also, in terms of survival, I would have a few coins on me, and if there's a shop on the island, I could buy some essentials. But I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah, great. What a lovely story as well. What an amazing little journey that you've gone on just with one act of kindness from someone. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was that trick means a lot to me. So, and I have done it quite a lot as well. I think it is amazing. It's an amazing trick.
It's great.
So yeah,
it's one of those ones. Unfortunately, money, I don't know everyone else's. It could just be the gigs that I've been at, but money is becoming increasingly harder to come by every day in people's pockets. So I've almost shifted to forks. So I keep a collection of forks in my inside pocket. So if I ask for a coin and no one has one, I say, don't worry, I've got some forks, which is a weird lead into a fork trick, and it normally gets a laugh. But I don't know how it's been for you, but coins, they're just disappearing at the moment at gigs. No one's got them.
I just don't bother to ask now, to be honest with you. Yeah, I don't really think people have them. I mean, every time I've done, I'll have done CoinVex, I've asked to borrow coins, but then I've also got my own coins ready. I mean, the impact's not the same. It has to be their coins.
I think that's a great second choice as well. Really, really good. But that brings us on to our third item. So what would you have in your third position?
Okay, so I've got a list here, and I'm still changing this as we go, but I think this does definitely have to be on here. So this is Point Blank, which is a routine by Gregory Wilson, and it's from his DVD called Pyrotechnic Pasteboards, I believe. And it is an amazing routine. And the reason it's on this list is because I performed it as well as Hard Stretch as part of my Magic Circle exam. So, I do actually gig this one quite a lot. But even so, it's still an important routine for me because it was in the exam. And if you don't know it, it's essentially it's like an ambitious card routine that ends with an anniversary waltz kicker. But it uses an entirely blank deck of cards, double blank on both sides, which obviously we can't talk about method, but that does help with some of the method, right? So that's already a big tick. But also it's just really weird, right? Like you start off with a blank deck of cards. And it's very funny, like just getting someone pick a card, they show it to everyone, it's blank, so they're already quite confused. And they tell me, they go, but they're all the same. Like they tell me as if I don't know, which I find quite funny. It's like when someone tells you your shoes are untied, and it's like, yeah, I know, I can feel the shoe flapping about on my foot. I know. Why do you have to tell me, right? But you just completely ignore them, which I think is hilarious. And you say, what's just going to fall? You put it back into the deck, and the card comes to the top, and you can keep going because they're all blank anyway. And then as soon as you then get them to sign the card, and the ink's jumping from one card to another, it's all the cards now have their signatures on. It's the card in your pocket. It's like it's a full-on routine, and it's just a blank deck of cards and a pen, and that's it. I think it's an amazing, amazing, amazing routine. So point blank, I have to include it because I do it all the time, and I just think it's very entertaining. And I don't know if it's a bit underappreciated.
I mean, that DVD when it came out was huge. Everyone loved Greg Orson's style at that point as well. I think was in your face for the first time. Everyone was like, wow, it's so quick and it's so fast and so snappy and a little bit cheeky as well. And I remember that routine. I remember Point Blank. I remember thinking, how has this not existed before? It makes so much sense. When you see a double blank deck, and we use a gimmick similar to it in a normal deck of cards, which feels a bit superfluous when you've got an entire deck of that gimmick, which just what it is.
Yeah, it's genius. It is a genius routine. You are right. I think it was massive, but I don't really see enough people doing it today, which is a good thing because it means that I'm like the only one. But I'm not the only one, but
not after this goes out. Everyone's going to be either digging that out or searching it out.
Yeah, so Point Blank, love it.
Great. And that brings us to your halfway point. What is at number 4?
Man. Okay, so I think I'm going to slightly edit my list. I think I'm going to add this thing, and then whilst we do the interval or the break, I'm going to quickly work out what I'm going to swap in its place. But I'm going to have to go with Rubik's Dream from Henry Harrius. So possibly Rubik's 360 is also very good, but I don't think it's necessary for the routine that I do with it, which is basically a cube match routine. I have a few ideas of things that I want to be working on in the future to kind of make that a little bit more my own. At the moment, it's not quite. It's still fairly similar to Henry's thing, just a cube match thing. However, I've got a very funny story with it, which I just want to share, which is that I was using the Venom cube, which is arguably way better because the moment that someone finishes mixing up a cube, you get the other cube and they match, and you demonstrate them. It's that moment. There's no kind of faffing about, all right? However, I was at a gig and someone mixed up that cube and then they accidentally dropped it on the floor. And there was no way out of it at all. And if you have it, you'll know why things need to be in certain places. And because of that, you have not got time to put that back together. So that was a very awkward moment. So anyway, partly because of laziness, actually, I just started using the Rubik's Dream instead because I already had that. And I thought, well, I'll use that for now, and then I'll sort out the Venom Cube later. And anyway, I then did a gig, and I passed this Rubik's Cube out into the audience, and they mixed it up. And then this little girl had the Rubik's Cube. And I said to her, pass it to me. And as a joke, I said, don't throw it. I should not have said that. She lobbed it, and it shattered into a million pieces. And she was in hysterics. She thought it was the funniest thing ever. Everyone was shocked. And I was like, yeah, I should not have said don't throw it, but I genuinely meant don't throw it. So now everyone doesn't know what to do. And I quickly realize, because I'm using Rubik's Dream and not Venom Cube, it actually doesn't really matter in terms of the method, right? So I got her dad to build this Rubik's Cube again. And as he was building it, she walked up to the stage and gently placed her teddy bear on the stage. And I said, why did you gently place a soft, cuddly teddy bear, yet you lobbed a hard Rubik's Cube? I did not understand it at all. Anyway, he puts this thing together, and then I paused. It took him about a couple of minutes, right? And I turned to the audience and said, now bear this in mind, right? Not only has this Rubik's Cube been mixed up, it's been abused. It's been demolished. It's been put back together in an order that I have no idea what it could possibly be. Let's find out. And I then managed to make it match. And I realized actually that it was more impressive that it had been destroyed and then it still matched. Because, yeah. So I just wanted to include that story in there because I thought that was just so funny. It's like, I didn't know how to get out of it. Yet because I used Rubik's Dream and not Venom Cube, I managed to get out of it. So because of that, Rubik's Dream, I'm like, yeah, that's a solid bit of kit, that.
So you mentioned about someone dropping your other cube and it smashing. Been there. That happened to me. I was doing a college show, and one of the students threw the cube to someone else to mix it up, and it just smashed everywhere. So yeah, I feel your pain there. It's a nightmare. But something interesting that you just said as well, is you said that with the little girl, you said that cube, she threw the cube and it broke, and then the dad put it back together, and somehow that felt more impossible. And it reminds me of when you could get someone to shuffle a deck of cards, but there's something more magical when someone drops the cards and they feel more mixed up and then they're collected. That feels like a more impossible thing, even though really they've just mixed up the cards and put them back together. But there's something about that unexpected moment which makes it feel more unreal.
Don't get me wrong, I'd rather it doesn't happen every time. It is more impossible, but it's also very annoying. So because I do have to then, when I get home, take it apart again, because that cube is not, you can't solve it, right? Oh, yeah. So both cubes, I must say, because I did make them match. But it was very annoying. But also, I think because of, like, I don't want that to happen again. And obviously you can't, it's really strange, isn't it? Because you can sort of sit down and try and write a list, like I've done today, but you can write a list of everything that you think could possibly go wrong, all right? And what you would do to get out of it. I honestly believe that that's a bit of a waste of time, because something will happen that you're never prepared for, and you'll realize how to deal with it in the moment, right? Which is either to just suck it up and just kind of, get on with it, scrap that routine, go on to the next one, or on the car journey home, you'll realize, now I've worked it out, so next time I know what to do. So because of that, I just can't use Venom Cube again, because I don't want to be in that situation. Whereas I feel like Rubik's Dream has that failsafe, and also there's the great joke about you putting it in the bag and solving it and blah blah blah, which I think's already entertaining in and of itself. So yeah, and I also feel your pain, especially I think at a college gig that must have been very awkward.
Well, I had a get out. I thought on my feet. So I had a normal Rubik's Cube behind me, and I had Kev G's cube cards as well. So I can't remember what I did or how I got around it, but I remember taking out the spare one, throwing it to that kid again, and just be like, right, don't worry about the one that's on the floor. Mix this one up now. And then I just carried on, but I used the cube cards instead because they weren't aware of the cube match at that point, so it was a bit redundant. So then I just did cube cards instead, but with a normal Rubik's Cube, and got myself out of it. But it was a bit ropey, I'm not going to
lie. Okay, yeah, that's a good one. That's a good get out. Number 5. Okay. Man, see, the thing is, I added Rubik's Dream quite late, so now I'm sort of thinking, all right, I'll go for this one. So, On Edge, Angelo Carbone. Okay, so obviously it's come out quite recently through Murphy's, but I bought it about a year ago because I was doing a show. I'm part of a club in Cambridge called the Pentacle Club, and it's one of the oldest magic clubs ever. I think and I'm very proud to be a member of it. It celebrated its centenary a few years ago, so it's definitely over 100 years old. I don't know. I should know exactly how old it is. I haven't been in for that amount of time. I've only been in since 2020. But we did a show last year that was all about Cambridge, and particularly like the university and kind of the very clever minds that have walked in and out of this fine city. And for the show, I had to do a routine. There was something about Cambridge, and I was kind of struggling because I'm not a brainiac, right? And a lot of people in the Pentacle Club are very clever. You've got scientists in there. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I felt like in comparison, I'm not going to come up with something that's, or I'm not going to be able to come up with a routine that is that heavy on science and this and that and the other. But then I was thinking, okay, well, and also how could you make it magical, right? And I was aware of On Edge. I was aware of it because there'd been a bit of commotion about it a couple of years before. And anyway, there's a bridge in Cambridge called the Mathematical Bridge. I don't know if you've heard of it. And it's basically a bridge that is said to have no nuts or bolts or screws or anything. Just the way that all the planks of wood are arranged means that it can hold itself up using gravity. Okay. Now there are nuts and bolts and stuff in it because apparently, I don't think this is true, but I know it's been proven to be not true, but there's like a myth, like an urban sort of legend, that one of the students at Cambridge, like 200 years ago, thought that he could make the remake the bridge, and that he got permission to take it apart, but then he couldn't put it back together, which is why there are now nuts and bolts and screws. So I actually, yeah, it's a very interesting bridge that you should definitely look up because it's got a lot of history to it. And I thought, well, On Edge, it's the perfect trick with the presentation of this mathematical bridge that can hold itself up together. Do you know what I mean? So I did that as my routine, and it was a great part of the show. And also, because the club had been obviously running for years, they did a similar routine a few years before in homage to that bridge, but they used Balance, Joshua J's trick. But I think On Edge is way better. Anyway, but the reason why I'm choosing On Edge is because when I was practicing it, I had a gig at an old people's home, and I thought, all right, well, I need to kind of like break in On Edge, and I've obviously rehearsed it at home, but I need to sort of do it in front of an audience before I do it for this Cambridge show. And this particular trick, I have not done many gigs at retirement homes. They're tough, right? Because you really feel like these people they're not interested. They do not care about this stupid little kid who's come in trying to show them card tricks. But do not do a book test in an old people's home, okay? They do not remember anything, right? So, and even if you do a book test on one of the carers that can remember, they're not impressed anyway, right? It's so hard to kind of win them over. So then I thought, well, maybe I'll use this to my advantage. I'll just do On Edge, and if they care or don't, it doesn't matter. So I was doing this routine, just building this card castle, and unfortunately, I got to the very last moment and the whole thing fell apart. Literally the very last moment. So we had a couple of, if you don't know On Edge, you build a card castle. I should have said this at the beginning. You build a card castle, and then you start taking cards away from the bottom, and then it holds itself together. This woman at the back, this old lady, gasped and went, "Oh no," as soon as the whole thing fell apart. And I knew, oh, they were paying attention, right? In their own way, right? But the fact that it sort of failed and she just naturally just sort of let out this kind of, right? It was like, wow, they were hooked. they were hooked. If I had built the thing and taken all the parts below it and then did it all properly, they probably wouldn't have reacted. But I kind of thought, wow, that is a very powerful piece of magic if I could get that reaction from a group of people that I thought were not interested in me. So I think because of that, it's a really, really great piece.
And I think that you're right over Balance by Josh J, which is also a great trick, but they're watching that trick happen as you're building it. There is no surprise at the end. And it's also given them a time to work out maybe a method for it. Whereas Angelo's version of a balance trick, everything's constructed and nothing's happened. So when you take that card off, that's when their brain just melts and gets destroyed, because there's nothing for them to clutch onto. There's no process for them to follow along with.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that it's and again, obviously there's magic going on. There's a method, but as a performer, you are genuinely building a card castle, right? So you are genuinely struggling to do that. And that is entertaining, I think. I remember doing this at, do you know the Volks Festival?
I don't, no.
So it's like I think it's stopped running actually now. But basically, it's at Waterloo. It's below in the vaults of Waterloo. They had this kind of like arts festival thing going on. Tom Brace had a night called Magic Roulette. He had a show on, and I performed on Edge as part of it. And I remember being there trying to build this thing, and the audience were like on the edge. They're on edge there, right? Because I was so nervous doing it. I don't know why I was particularly nervous this day. And I was really struggling with the first bit. That eventually, when I built the thing, they were all impressed because I managed to do that. And then there was the kicker afterwards. But I remember what was really funny was I was struggling so much to build this thing. And then I said, it's because we're in the vaults of Waterloo. It's the trains, right? The trains are like making it like shaky, okay? And then after a couple of beats, some guy in the audience went, there's a train strike. And I was like, damn it. I can't even use that as an excuse. I'm just not good at building this.
That's very bad luck. What a bad time to use that one.
Yeah, I was like, yeah. Could not use that as an excuse. But anyway, it's an amazing routine. So on Edge, that's on my list.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to let you know about all the exciting things happening here at Alakazam Magic. We have brand new releases every single month and live streams every Tuesday, so there's so much content to dive into. We ship every single day. If you're in the UK and your order goes to over £40, we ship it to you for free. If you're international and your order amounts to over £70, we ship it for free, fully tracked. And if you live in the United States, we get it sent from our California branch, which means you have cheaper shipping, faster shipping, and no import duties. Can't get any better than that. Honestly, there's so much to discover here at Alakazam, including the monthly newsletter with all orders. We have our own live academy where the world's biggest names in Magic teach the best tricks in the world. And it's live, so you can interact and ask any questions you like. We have so many exciting things happening here at Alakazam, so make sure you follow us on all social media, Facebook and Instagram, to find out the latest news. Cheers guys, and enjoy the rest of the podcast.
So a great list so far, and that takes us on to your sixth item. So what are you taking in your sixth place?
Yeah, so mate, this is so tough. I don't know how all the other guests have reacted, but like this is really hard because I am one of these magicians, I'll be honest with you, that bulks up my pockets and just goes around with everything. So if I have to limit it down to 8 things, and it's really tough. So this is definitely going to be on the list. In a Flash, Jay Sankey. Now, I don't really have much of a story with this in terms of my relationship to this trick because I do it and it's great. I did it actually. I'm lying. I guess I do have a story with it. I did it as part of when I was at uni. We all had to do a dissertation. I did drama at Manchester. And I'll be honest with you, I was not that bothered about the degree part of it. I was much more interested in like the society stuff, like, doing drama shows and these kind of things. And so I thought, okay, how can I basically DOS my dissertation, if you will? And I decided I would do it all about magic, because no one else is going to do a dissertation about magic. And because you can't tell anyone the secrets, there'll be so many parts of my essay which will be like, unfortunately, I can't tell you this part of the thing. So I meant that actually I could get away with so much because there's so much that I can't say. So I managed to get a first in this dissertation, but it was all BS, right? So, however, part of the dissertation as well was you could either do I don't know, I can't remember how many words it was, like a 15,000 word essay or like a 10,000 word essay with a performance. So I thought, okay, if I do a dissertation with a performance, then I can do the performance. I'll do a magic show. So I did a magic show, and in that show, I did point blank. I did a Rubik's match routine, and I did in a flash. Okay, now in a flash, if you don't know it, someone chooses a card, they sign it, you put the cards down, and you get you borrow a coin or any small item, all right? And you wrap it with some flash paper. Because you don't say, I'm going to wrap it with this flash paper. You wrap it with some normal paper, you put it on top of the deck, and you light it, the paper, and the coin or small item burns all the way through. It burns all the way through the pack and stops at their card. And I remember seeing this for the first time when I was a member of the Young Magicians Club. Someone performed it in the Member of the Month competition, because we always used to do that every time we went. They'd have a little performance in the morning, and whoever the audience voted as the best, they got a little trophy. And I saw someone do that, and I still remember watching it for the first time and being absolutely baffled and fooled by it, because it was like, how the hell can that coin know where their card is? I was about 13 or 14 at the time, and it was one of those tricks that's always stuck with me. And I think that every time I perform it, people have that reaction I did. I can remember the reaction I had to it. I just think it's a genius routine. Also, fire is just amazing, right? Fire is just incredible. So, yeah, that's on the list. In a flash, Chase Sankey. I love it.
Arguably one of his biggest releases as well, surely. I remember years and years ago, it was everywhere. Everyone was doing it. It became like a standard gigging trick.
It's just such a good trick. And also, there's a great moment about, sort of thinking, where can you go from here? You've ruined your deck of cards, right? You can't do any magic now because you've burnt your deck, right? So I just think it's people will talk about that afterwards, 100%. So
yeah. There was a trick years ago. I don't know if it still exists, or I think it was released as a PDF by Daniel Madison. I think it was literally called Burn or something like that. But that was a great concept as well. So the idea was that you had a card taken out of a deck, it was put back into the box, and then you took a lighter and you burnt through the deck and the box on the corner. So there's a big wedge of the deck which was burnt out. And then you shook the deck and one card formed, and the whole corner could be seen in the wedge that was missing, if that makes sense. And then you could take the deck out, spread it, and there was one card that was inexplicably unharmed in the middle of the deck. And that always reminded me of a very In a Flash-esque vibe trick that you could work alongside it if you didn't have it. But that was a really great trick as well.
Well, that's reminded me of another trick that I'm going to have to swap into this list now. So thanks for that.
Well, so I will say that every other episode so far, there have been honourable mentions. So I have allowed a few honourable mentions along the way, if you so choose to use that.
I will be using that, definitely. Yeah.
All right, I'll let you off then. So that takes us on to your 7th position. What's in your 7th place?
Okay. So 7th place, which is one that you've just reminded me of, is Chicago opener, specifically Mark Spellman's presentation for it, which is using fire. And essentially it's Chicago opener where someone chooses a card, you then click your fingers, run through the pack. One card has a different coloured back, and then it's the card they chose. You put that card down, face down. They choose another card, and you say the same thing's going to happen. And when you go through, no card has changed colour on the back, but the one that you've just placed down on the table, you turn it over and it's changed into the second person's card. So Mark Spellman's variation is basically the same thing. He did it in a lecture at the Magic Circle, and I've been doing it ever since, which is where the card is scorched on the back. And you really should, I don't know where he teaches that, but because there's so many nuances into it. It's not just a case, oh, just burn the card and stuff, right? Like, I really don't want to go into more than that, because there's so many thoughts and things that he has in that routine that are just amazing. So if you're able to find that out, I'm sure Peter and Mark will know exactly where that is, but I do that all the time. I swear I do it all the time. I think that there's something so powerful about the burn mark on the back of the cards. Things with fire I just absolutely love. But the reason why I want to bring up Chicago opener is because it's not just that presentation that you can do. You can do so many different other presentations. And when I was in the Edinburgh Fringe, this is what I'm about to say to you now is gold. All right. This is the best bit of advice anyone has ever given me. Okay. It was John Lenihan. He came into the lecture at the Pentacle Club in Cambridge, and he knew that I was about to go to Edinburgh. And he said, do Chicago opener, and instead of the card changing colour, have a sticker with the details of your show appearing on the card. And then you give that away at the end. So you do Chicago opener where they choose the card, it changes twice, and they keep the thing. And when I did my show in Edinburgh, I had people coming with the card that I'd given them. All right. This was way better than flyers. All right. People actually went, wow, I've got to go and see this show. So I've just given away an absolute golden bit of information there. Okay. But the reason why I'm giving it away is because I've also got a bit of a story. I know you said I've only got like 4 minutes for each thing, but I have to tell you this story.
No, go for it.
Okay. So I was in Edinburgh, and I could see this man in the distance with his kids, and he was a bit of a celeb. And I was thinking, oh my God, if I can get you to come to my show, I will sell out this run. So I tried to sort of follow him, but there was a big crowd of people. So I was losing him, right? But eventually I saw him, and I was getting close to him, and then he joined a queue for food. And you can't really like fly to someone when they're like queuing up for food. It's a bit disrespectful. So I did the decent thing, and I just sort of watched him from a distance for about 20 minutes, right? And eventually he left the queue, bought his food, and I pounced over to him. I said, can I show you a trick? And he was like, yeah, okay, go for it. So I did Chicago Open. I got his kid to choose a card. And I went, now look, there's one card with a different back, and it's always got the details of my show. That looks really good. What was your card? He said, the Jack of Spades. I turned it over. It was the 9 of Diamonds. I was really fooled, right? I was like, how the heck has this gone wrong? Because I've done this thousands of times. This can't go wrong, right? And then I was thinking, then what did you say? Jack of Spades. So I'm quickly looking through, like, what the hell's happened? I quickly palm off the Jack and I take it out of my pocket, do a card to pocket thing. But they can tell that, like, this was not supposed to happen, right? And then I say, oh, do you want to, come to the show? And they went, oh, we're actually leaving tomorrow. I think that they weren't going to leave, but they decided to after seeing me perform so badly to them. It was Alex Horn from Taskmaster. And I was so traumatized afterwards. Afterwards, I was telling this story to, I've told it to quite a few people, and lots of people have found it quite funny. But I remember telling it to Andy Nyman, and then he went, oh, and he loves magic. I was like, thanks, Andy. You made me feel even worse about myself. Right? So obviously I don't want to go into methods, But just as a heads up, if you are going to perform Chicago opener, don't set it up twice. I thought I set it up the once, and it messed up the whole thing. So it was the worst moment of my life. So, I mean, that's quite a big deal, me including it on the list, because that was traumatizing. But Chicago opener, I think you can't go wrong with that.
It's such a good routine. It's just such a direct but baffling. In fact, so there's a Matthew J. Dowden version which I really liked from years ago. If you're a member, listeners, if you're a member of Alakazam Unlimited, if you click on the creator pages, go to Matthew Dowden. The trick is called X marks the spot, and in his version, he talks about he's got quite a cheeky persona. So he has these two women, and he says, "All right, guys, I shouldn't do this, but I'm gonna tell you how this trick works. So we have something in Magic called marked cards," and he spreads through the deck, and he says, "Right, tell me when you see it." And one of the women goes, "There!" And there's like a big X. And he says, "Shh, they're spies. They're listening. Shh. Yeah, that's the marked card." And then he does it with that card. So then obviously he hands her that card. Someone else picks a card. He says, "All right, I'll keep a lookout. You see if you can find the marked card." And he's looking around, and there's no other marked card. And he says, "No, it's the one in your hand." And she's like, "No way!" And he's, "No, there's spies everywhere." And he really plays up to that moment. But I always thought that was a really cheeky, fun little presentation for it as well. But yeah, there's just so many versions of it. It's such a great trick. And Mark will be upset that I do not know his version. So I will have to try and seek it out. I'll ask.
I don't know the name of it, but he did it at the Magic Circle lecture, right? So, and I just have done it ever since. It's so good. It is so good. And someone said to me when I did it, "You should be in Vegas." And I was like, I really shouldn't. But like, it's one of those tricks that gets those reactions from people. His presentation is it's so good. So good.
So your 8th position, what's there?
Can I get rid of some honorary mentions quickly? Just get them off my chest.
Of course you can. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So obviously I'm going to have in my pocket anyway an Orphic wallet. Okay. So that's going to be there. It's an EDC. Boom. There you go. And in the Orphic wallet, I've got loads of routines. So there we go. Already ticked that off. Also, there's a thing that I also did in my Magic Circle exam, which is a contact lens production, a giant contact lens production, which is essentially... it's a comedy thing. And it's a great routine, especially as a glasses wearer. But I think this has to be an honorary mention as well. Stand-up Monty. I do it all the time. And I think it's really good. But it's an honorary mention because I think that I think sometimes it is fooling and other times I think people do... Maybe I'm just not very good at it, but it's one of those things that I feel like 99% of the time it hits. Whereas I think there's everything else I've got on this list hits 100% of the time. And I just think Stand Up Monty's, I don't know, something about it that I just think doesn't quite hit the mark for me, but I do it all the time. Nevertheless, I think it's very entertaining. But this is a bit of a odd one because this is kind of a normal card trick, I guess. This is a routine from a DVD called Zen Magic by Ian Moran. And it's called Thanks to Lance, John, and Dave. And it's basically a card to pocket routine. But the way that he's routined it, genuinely, I feel like a superstar when I'm performing this routine. Okay. You basically say, choose a card, and we're not going to use a whole deck. We'll use just the kings to do this, right? Because I want you to burn everything that I'm doing. I feel like if I use the whole deck, it will, you won't be able to focus on exactly what I'm doing. So you put the card in amongst the kings, and it vanishes and reappears in your pocket. And then you do it again. You put it in and amongst the kings. They see those 5 cards. It vanishes. There's now 4 cards that reappears in your pocket. And then it ends with the 51 cards in pocket, the Dave Williamson thing. And that's the finale. And the 1 card that didn't go to the pocket is their card. And I've done this specific routine so many times. I absolutely love it. And also... I don't know why. I just feel like a lot of stuff that I do doesn't involve that much actual sleight of hand, but this one does. I just feel very proud of myself every time I perform it. So, yeah, bit of a like niche one, I guess. But I really I don't know if you've seen this routine, but I just think it's so good.
I haven't, but Ian Moran's superb anyway.
Oh, he's amazing.
Everything that he puts out is just incredible.
Yeah, and the DVD is so good. There's some brilliant stuff on this DVD. So, I think I have to include it because I just feel really proud of myself whenever I do it.
And it's nice because on each list, what I'm hoping is that there are one or two that people aren't familiar with, and it gives everyone the opportunity to discover new things. So even for me, in each one, I'm writing down the tricks that I've not heard of, and then they're ones that I can explore later on and see what's so incredible about them. So that's going to be one that I'm going to look up. I do remember Zen Magic, though. I do remember that as a product in the past.
It came out during lockdown, I think. I think it was, produced before lockdown, and then it came out during it. So it was that time when we had nothing to do, and I bought it, and I watched it and thought, wow, this is a great DVD. And also it's a DVD, which was kind of weird because, especially by that point, it was all about downloads.
And that takes us on to our final two items. Now, these are the hardest items because you're only allowed one of each. So whereas you had 8 tricks, you've only got one book and one item. But that means it might be even more interesting. So what did you go for your book?
So there's no honourable mentions for this, I guess. It's strictly one.
You can if you want honourable. Lots of other people have done honourable mentions along the way.
Okay, so I was considering like what book means a lot to me, and also what would if I was on an island for a long time, what would I want to get my teeth into, So I think it will actually like Mnemonica by Juan Tamariz. I think that would be a great book to finally learn mnemonica, all right? That would be good, but I'm not going to go with that one. There's another, The Art of Astonishment series. Amazing books. And I always discover something new in there that I never knew before, but I'm not going to go with them. There's another book, Impromptu Secrets by Dominic Twose. Incredible. I picked that book up about half a year ago, and I'm obsessed with it, but I'm not going to go with that one. The book that I'm going to go for, which I think is very predictable, and you might have gone with it if you did guess, is Notes from a Fellow Traveller, the Deluxe Collector's Edition by Derren Brown. But the reason why I'm going for this book is because of my copy of it specifically, right? I can't go anywhere without my copy of it. Actually, that's not true. I would never read this on a train because it's a deluxe edition. I don't want to get it destroyed. But if I'm on a desert island and I'm there for the rest of my life, then this is the book that I want to take with me because of the story attached to it. So I, obviously, as you mentioned at the start, I worked on Unbelievable, and Derren was a big part of putting that show together. And when he did his interview to release this book at the Magic Circle, we'd just finished rehearsing for that day at 3 Mill Studios. And I was already sort of, pinching myself, thinking like, how the hell have I ended up here? Like working on this show. I just couldn't believe it. And Derren and Harry de Cruz were about to get an Uber to the Magic Circle. And I walked past and I said, I'm on my way there as well. And they said, do you want to hop in? And I was like, okay. So I'm there. Harry de Cruz is in the front with the Uber driver, and it's me and Derren in the back of the Uber on the way to this thing. And I was like, I feel like a rock star, right? I just this is what the hell has happened to my life. I just couldn't believe it. And when you're sat in the back of a car with Derren Brown, what do you chat about? Now, stupidly, I couldn't think of anything to say. So I just said, oh, Derren, did you know that where we've been rehearsing, 3 Mill Studios, I've actually been there before? And he went, really? I was like, yeah, my mum told me yesterday that when I was a baby model for Pampers. And we did it at Three Mill Studios. And he thought this was hilarious. I thought, great, Derren found this funny, excellent. And he kept on going on about it, you know, little Pampers boy, right? He just thought it was so funny. Then I sort of thought, well, I probably should have asked him about his career. I probably should have asked him about kind of like any advice for like a budding kind of like mentalist magician performer. But no, we ended up just talking about Pampers pretty much the whole way. So then when I got my book, I was so excited to get it, especially the deluxe copy, which was very expensive. He signed it. This was like 250 quid. So I've got my £250 edition of Notes from a Fellow Traveller, signed by Derren Brown, to Little Boy Pampers.
Great. Excellent.
So it could not be me. So I could sell this on eBay possibly, but you know, it's quite generic, I guess. But Little Boy Pampers, like, yeah, you can't write this stuff. So there you go.
All I'm thinking is, you know how like years later, secondhand books go on and they're like collector's items for
exactly.
like 50 years time. One day, someone's gonna buy that from like the Magic Circle Library or something, open it up, and it's signed by Derren Brown to that person. How many stories in 100 years' time are going to go about what was going on nowadays in magic for that to be a thing?
Yeah, exactly. Who was Little Boy Pampers? Yeah. So, yeah.
So that means that after today, everyone, if they see Roman about, has to call him Little Boy Pampers. That's all you have to do. And anywhere you see him, we'll make that stick.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Jamie. I appreciate that.
Oh, that's great. What a lovely like little in joke, though. I think that's great. I love things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's great.
Yeah, so I think I do love that, and I do treasure that book because of it.
And it's a wonderful book content-wise as well.
It's
just full of gems, and it's amazing. I wish more performers did that. I wish more performers kept like a diary almost, which was then released to the magic community to see what went right and what went wrong. I think it would be super interesting to get that take on the industry, and I think that's what he did really well with that book.
Especially someone that you think gets it right all the time, because how can you be that successful if you're not perfect? But he's not perfect, you know, and that's very inspiring.
Yeah, I can imagine. And that brings us on to your curveball. Your random item. What did you go for?
Well, I don't know. This is a bit boring. I don't know. I think I've gone for my piano. I'm not very good at the piano, and I don't like playing it in front of people. But I feel like an audience of coconut folk would be the only type of people that I'd be happy to sort of play in front of. And I just like writing and playing silly, stupid songs. I feel like my biggest influences outside of magic are comedy musicians, you know, like Tim Minchin, Flight of the Conchords. It's a great one called Tom Lehrer from like decades ago. So I think, and also just musical theatre, I absolutely love it. So I'd say my piano, I would definitely have that with me as well.
Yeah, great choice. We've had a piano before as well, so you're not the only
really?
one to say a piano.
That's fine. I'll still go with the piano.
And what was interesting is the show that you've just come out of there was a piano trick, and there's a few people. I know Timon Kraus, who is a mentalist. He had a show which he had a live like quartet or something at the side of the stage, and I know that a few people have come up with. One of our guests got a new trick in his show which involves a piano. So I still think it's quite an interesting prop to try and write a trick about that isn't an obvious trick in some way.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting for you to try and come up with something different. I know we've got like levitating piano, you know, the one where it floats up and there's a famous clip of it collapsing somewhere in the world. And obviously the book test style idea of that. So yeah, it would be interesting if you could come up with another. Maybe you could do like a transposition of the black and white keys, maybe they swap places.
Oh, that's a
or
great
you
idea.
move one down. You could do like a matrix of the black keys. They move up and down the piano, which would be good. Or make the sounds, the notes swap about. So you play a C, and then suddenly it changes. Name a different note, a D. Great. Snap, and then just suddenly it changes. That could be.
Or you could make a piano and a trumpet swap sounds.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. This is like the musical version of Hard Stretch. You're just going to make the properties swap over, which would be great.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a great list. I think I still feel like I was on the money with quirkiness because each one of those routines. I mean, I haven't seen the Ian Moran one, and Chicago Opener is sort of a normalish card trick, I guess, but there's still like a weirdness with the odd card or like a marked card or a different presentation. So each of the tricks are quite quirky in themselves. There's nothing... It's quite a diverse mixture. I feel like if I was to watch you gig this as an act and I took a photo each time, the difference in each photo would be quite contrasting, where each one is so unique in that choice.
Yeah, well, I love these tricks. I like... It's a weird one because I feel like when I was at the session, I was chatting to someone who was like, so what kind of magic do you do? And I was like, I don't really know. Like, just anything that I think is magical or good. Or like, I find you get people where it's like, I'm a card guy. I'm a coin guy. Do you know what I mean? And I just think I'm happy to sort of do anything as long as it's magical and entertaining and a bit kind of odd. But I think even if it's a bit weird, it still has to have logic to it. You know, you can't have something kind of quirky and weird that is just like just so unfathomable, you know? Like, take for example On Edge, right? It ends with the magical moment, but you've spent time to set up the rules, and then you take those rules away. Do you know what I mean? So I think that there is still logic to it. I don't think that it's all like bizarre for the sake of it. Do you know what I mean? I'm kind of gonna go back on what I said slightly, which is that weird, wacky stuff is great, but I think that you can't tell that it's weird or wacky unless you've set up a world that's kind of normal. Do you know what I mean? Like Hard Stretch. If I just didn't do the routine and just took out the props and went, look at these things, right? I found these things and they've swapped places. People will go, what? Why are you showing this to me? Whereas if you allow someone to care about a rubber band and care about a ring and understand how they work and do a couple of cool things with them as well and sort of realize that you can do magic with them. And then, boom, this thing happens that they're not expecting. You know, that is weird and wacky because you've already established a world where that's not possible. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's kind of what I mean. I mean, it's a little bit like if you, like double cross, for instance, right? If you woke up one day and there was a cross on your hand and you've got no idea where it came from, you'd be like a bit, I don't know, you'd be like someone is in the middle of the night drawn on my hand. What's going on? This is kind of weird. Who is this weird person in my room that's just drawn on my hand? But in the context of that routine, that could never have happened. No one could have drawn on your hand, right? Because you've established all of these sort of rules. And I do think actually working with Derren and Andy and Andrew, I've learned from them like the importance of literally like ending with something that's just gonna punch them in the face and just go, what the hell? I never saw that coming at all. Something just so bizarre that's out there. But you can't start with that. That has to be your ending. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Roman. It's such a great list. If our listeners want to find out more about you or anything that's coming up or that you've got going on, where do they go to?
Well, I mean, best place to go to is my Instagram page, I think, which is at Roman Armstrong. Yeah, I'd say that's sort of the best port of call. I don't know when this is going to come out. I don't know what I'm going to be up to. But I have got ideas of things that I want to do. So watch this space. But yeah, I think it's at this present point in time, Unbelievable has ended, and now I have no identity. So hopefully by then I will have worked something out. But
I'm sure.
yeah, at the moment I need a bit of a reflection.
Well, we know where you're going to be. You're going to be on an island with a piano and a dodgy copy of Notes of a Fellow Traveller.
Yeah, and 7 coconut people.
There you go.
Yeah.
Why 7? There's a very specific number.
I don't know. Yeah, just 7, I imagine.
Okay.
I'll be playing the traitors with coconuts.
They're perfect. Yeah. At the time of recording, that show is on. Some people aren't going to know what it is, but it's just the best. I feel like we should do traitors just with magicians, though. I think that would be so interesting. Blackpool Magic really next year. Traitors, magician episodes. That's what we need. That would be brilliant. It'd be so funny. Thank you so much, Roman.
Ramen.
Ramen. There you go. And thank everyone else for listening. We'll be back again next week with another episode of Desert Island Tricks. Bye-bye.
Hello guys, I'm here to talk to you about Alakazam Unlimited. This is the best streaming platform in the world, I'm telling you now. With Alakazam Unlimited, you get access to over 150 magic routines. This is video performances and explanations. We have card magic, coin magic, kids magic, rope magic, mentalism, stage, parlor, impromptu. We've got you covered. All of this for the low price of just £4.99 a month, and you can cancel at any time. Perfect if you've got commitment issues. Yes, I'm talking to you. Guys, you are going to absolutely love it. If you haven't joined the platform already, what the heck are you doing? Alakazam Unlimited is a streaming platform that you need to be a part of. Not only that, there is also exclusive content only available on the platform. Check it out now, alakazam.co.uk. Cheers.